Good morning everyone, welcome to a new episode. Today with Trina we're gonna challenge you to actually figure out which shot we took with a kit lens at 35mm f5.6 and which one we got with a 35mm f1.4. This is a few $1,000s. This is actually less than $300 on the crop sensor. Let's see what we can do, and let's thank Luminar for actually making this possible and sponsoring this video. If you're ready for this challenge, I want to see what you can do. Let's get started. I'm gonna be taking the same photo on that kit lens and on that 35-1.4, and I want you to figure out which one was shot at f1.4 and which one was shot at f5.6. I'm trying to trick you in those photos, so take all the time you need. There's something really cool that just came up in Luminar and I want to test it out, and let's see if you can figure it out. Let's see what the limits are. If you can figure it out, drop it in the comments below. Trina, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
We're gonna have Trina literally like walk across there, and I'm gonna take the photo at basically that height. I think it's gonna look nice. And the goal is to have that little lifestyle movement. So we're on that 16-50 kit lens, 3556, and it's gonna be 35mm right there. Here we go. So we're at f5.6. That's the lowest we can go. Trina, ready? Let's go. Okay, we've got the photo. Now we're gonna do the same thing with the 35mm. If we're able, honestly, to recreate that f1.4, it's gonna be so good. I'm gonna show you side by side the photos, and you'll have to choose. Let's go. We did it was basically Luminar AI, the new version, and guys, there is in the description a link and a coupon code for you, Pierre20 on checkout. If you want $20 off, you're gonna get the new update and the new release that's coming up soon with some new features. And this is the f1.4 shot. Surprisingly, this is the f5.6 shot. And now what you can notice is that I used the bokeh AI tool, and we're gonna disable it so you can see what it does in the background. And what it did is actually really defocus a little bit of that background. What's cool here is that you can tweak things like the brightness, the highlight glow, the warmth, and the depth correction, which means the defocus plan is gonna be closer or further from you. And I actually didn't change it on that one much. What is good to see is that f1.4, your background, you can still see it. You know, there is a little bokeh, but you can tell what's in the background. So when I was actually emulating the same with the bokeh AI, I managed to get to something fairly realistic in my opinion. If you're wondering how it works, it's actually completely kind of automatic in a way. It's taking what is supposed to be the subject in the image by default. So when you just turn it on and like move the amount, you can see what your subject is, and then you can actually defocus if you want, like remove parts or add parts. It's very intuitive, very easy. The edge corrections helps you make the subject more or less realistic, meaning that the background doesn't pop out. All right, second shot, guys. We're gonna have Trina right there against that really cool pattern background, and I'm gonna shoot sideways to use a little bit the depth of field. If I were to shoot like straight in, I don't think there wouldn't be much to recreate with the bokeh, but right there we've got a little bit of the background bokeh. Look at that, and I think it's gonna look great. So Trina, ready? Look towards me. 1, 2, 3, boom. By the way, this is a Sony ZV-E10. It's like a $700 camera, brand new, and it's performing pretty well. I'm excited. So 35-1.4, we got the shot. Let's switch again to the kit lens. So just remember that 35mm on that crop sensor is actually more like a 50mm, and so this is at f5.6. 1, 2, 3. This is the f5.6 version, and this is the f1.4. The difference you will see is that we get a bokeh with the lights, we get a circle of bokeh, and the foreground is a little more defocused. On this one, I think it's still good if you're trying to make your subject pop. If you really don't have that f1.4 lens or you can't shoot at f1.4, I think it works really great. So here, the subject tracking was really good. You see, you can add a little more if you want, or if you feel like one part hasn't been taken into account, and maybe here you're like, okay, I'm gonna add a little more. So I'm gonna paint just there for the hairs that are missing. Boom. This one looks a little different because we don't have the same bokeh here. I changed the depth correction to -88. Why? Because at 0, look what happens. Your foreground is actually still in focus. So I needed to go down to actually get my foreground to defocus. It's interesting how the tool works and how you can make it change things. And then you can change the highlight glows, because I feel like on the 35 f1.4 my highlights were a little more glowy. So I just increased the highlights glow, and I felt like I had something fairly similar. That one is a little harder. I feel like it would be one of the hardest photos. One more shot, actually 2 more. They're gonna be street lights. One is gonna be right here. Trina is gonna pretend to be someone coming out of work. I really like the mural and walking out. And the last one is gonna be in the middle of the streets under bridges. I'm gonna really push the limits on the next one and see if we can make it. We're gonna try at 50mm f1.2. All right, Trina, ready for this one? Okay, let's start with the kit lens. Let's go. Okay, ready, Trina? 1, 2, 3, go. Let's try it with the other lens. Trina, how are you feeling so far? Do you think people are gonna be able to tell?
I don't know, it's a tough one actually.
Ready, go. Okay, so on that one, my subject actually was well selected, so I didn't have to do much. And what I did was just add a little bit of bokeh, because even at 1.4 here, you don't really see much. Everything seems to be a little sharp, and you can see the background very clearly. So what I did was add a little bit of it, and I lowered the depth correction, because if you lowered it all the way, you could like literally have your subject pop, but that looks unnatural. So I just put it like around -12, and that's how we get. Now, the last shot, street shot in the middle of the road. That is a tough one. So this was shot at 50mm f1.2. Well, obviously I couldn't get the same like exact thing. This was shot with the 50mm on the kit lens at f5.6. And as you can see, it's actually interesting. I feel like with the bokeh AI tool, you're actually able to make your subject stand a little more than without. You see, like all those colors are still very present and you have the background, but here the subject stands a little more. I didn't have the perfect frame, so it's a little tricky, and I will say there are limitations to any tool. As you can see, the car in the background hasn't been taken properly into account. I fed that back to the team. They'll work and releasing an update to fix, but it's interesting to see how it works. And honestly, for me, when I compare those photos, I'm really blown away, because you're able to recreate the bokeh that we're all chasing. Maybe not in the most perfect ways, but if you're on a budget, if you're trying to create something and you don't have the means, or you actually shot at a high aperture but you need to refocus on your subject, this is so good. For example, for thumbnails for YouTube, this is something I'm gonna be using in order to have me and the camera in focus and have the background disappear. I've listed a few use cases that could be super helpful. When I was shooting weddings and I was shooting group portraits, it was always an issue, because you have to shoot at an aperture that's high enough, but then you get the background also. So actually you could get group photos at f5 and then defocus the background, which could be super helpful. And then if you do long exposure shots with a model, for example, you have to shoot at f12, well, you could defocus after your background, which would be great. Let me know in the comments what you think about it. You can grab the new version of Luminar AI with the link in the description. Let me remind you, there is a $20 off discount with the code Pierre20. Thank you so much, Luminar, for actually pushing things. It's not cheating, in my opinion. It's really using the tools we have. Even on our phone, we have that defocus thing, to integrate that into our current camera process. I'm actually surprised it doesn't exist in our cameras yet, or that there is no camera that allows you to virtual defocus. That would be interesting. All right, I hope this has been fun, and that if you have Luminar AI, you're gonna try it and let me know what you think in the comments. If you don't have it, it's cheap, just grab it, honestly. I received something new right there, and we're gonna go test it out tonight. It's a manual lens. I'm not gonna say more, and it has a crazy low aperture. Get out there, go shoot, try something different, try something new.